From about 1885 to the end of the Second World War, most of Africa was under the yoke of colonialism. Colonial historiography held sway. According to this imperial historiography, Africa had no history and therefore Africans were a people without history. What a lie! But the lie held sway for quite a while thanks to some individuals. George W. Hegel claimed,
Africa is no historical part of the world. It has no movement or development to exhibit. Historical movements in it, that is in the northern part, belong to the Atlantic or European world. Egypt will be considered in reference to the passage of the human mind from its eastern to its western phase, but it does not belong to the African spirit. What we properly understand by Africa is the unhistorical, underdeveloped spirit, still involved in the conditions of mere nature.
According to one Isaac Samuel, an independent researcher who blogs at African History Extra, this man, George Hegel, willfully misinterpreted first-hand accounts of the Asante Kingdom from the 18th century. For information on Asante Kingdom's history, Hegel relied on the writings of one Thomas Bodick, a British envoy to Asante. Hegel distorted this account greatly. In a section on the supposed despotism of African kings, Hegel stated that the Asante king inherits all the property left by his deceased subjects, yet the original writer had recorded that the king is heir to the gold of every subject. In a section on the supposed fanaticism of Africans, Hegel claimed that in the Asante's pre-war preparations, the bones of the king's mother are washed with human blood, yet the original writer had recorded that the bones were bathed in rum and water, wiped with silks, and then covered in gold, to be interred later. In a section about the supposed sensuousness of Africans, Hegel claimed that Asante festivals included the consumption of a person by the public, yet Bowditch, the original writer, recorded that only small pieces of the enemy's heart were mixed in the meals of a few war chiefs, certainly not the public. To this man, George Hegel, Africans existed at the lowest level of consciousness. They were animalistic, and that is why he claimed that Africa lay outside history. According to Hegel, it was only by encountering the West that Africa entered into a process of consciousness and thus world history. It wasn't just Hegel who was hell-bent on insisting on his ridiculous notion that Africa had no history. Hugh Trevor Roper, born in 1914, a historian on 17th-century European history, stated on BBC, "Perhaps in the future there will be some African history to teach. But at present there is none, there is only the history of the Europeans in Africa. The rest is darkness, and darkness is not the subject of history." The great lie that Africa had no history before the coming of the white man. If history is something that has been done or experienced by particular people repeatedly over a long period, how can it be that African people had no history? One of the earliest civilizations was ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt, which first developed over 5,000 years ago, is one of the most notable of these civilizations. There was Nubia before that, in what is today the Sudan. Egypt of the pharaohs is best known for its great monuments and feats of engineering, such as the pyramids. The ancient Egyptians, a black people who lived in Africa, made important contributions in various branches of mathematics, medicine, irrigation, and architecture. Ancient Egypt had an important influence on ancient Greece, and it is now well known that Greek scholars such as Pythagoras and Archimedes studied in Egypt. The sheer amount of information that we have on African history is overwhelming. We have the Nok culture, the Ghana, Mali, and Songhai empires, the Senegambia stone circles, the Asante kingdom, the Dahomey kingdom, the Congo kingdom, the Shilluk kingdom, the Baganda kingdom, the kingdom of Mapongabwe. We can go on and on. There has been existence in Africa before the white man came to Africa, and there is no existence without history. Before the coming of the white man, Africa was organized into political, cultural, social, and economic institutions. Africa had its own political, judicial, education, and spiritual organizations. It is a big lie that Africa had no history. Eurocentric and racist views in Europe have tried to deny our history, but thankfully, the tide is turning rapidly.